All right. I'm live. So this is my first stream using OBS. This is my first stream trying to get tipbitcoin.cash working with the stream. It is 100% inevitable that everything will go wrong. So I'm just going to plan on that and get my expectations appropriately low. So got a link there if you want to send me a tip and have it pop up there. And I've got a link there for bitbacker.io if you'd like to support me. I'm going to plug those early on before I get into the meat of everything. Bitbacker.io may or may not be like working again already. It was sort of in disrepair, having like payments get stuck, and then it was acquired by Float, float.app. But it looks like they have a timeline supposedly for getting Bitbacker up and running again, but I haven't heard much more about it other than the fact that it's totally the plan to get it going again. But if you want to check me out there, that'd be fantastic. So today we're going to do a read through of the Libre Whitepaper. Now I have read through this once and managed not to barf the first time. We'll see how it goes the second time. You're going to hear me complaining actually probably more about how badly written the paper is than the actual content and their attempt at making it seem like a viable cryptocurrency, which is unfortunate. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe I should bring up the page because there is a chat, I guess, which I don't see on the streaming page. Like I said, this is the first time I'm doing this from OBS, so maybe I should check out the page itself. Let me see if I can manage this. I go bring up YouTube in another tab. Go to my channel. I'm sure there's a link from the live dashboard or whatever, but I don't know where it is, and it could take me 10 times longer to find it that way than just to go to my channel. Let's see. Right, but now I'm streaming to myself, which isn't, all right, here's the chat, and I can pop out the chat, right? Wow, I did it. I popped out the chat, guys. I can now close that window so I'm not streaming to myself. What's up, Michael Elliott? Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. Libra time. All right. An introduction to Libra. Libra's mission is to enable a simple global currency and financial infrastructure that empowers billions of people. This document outlines our plans for a new decentralized blockchain, a low volatility cryptocurrency, and a smart contract platform that together aim to create a new opportunity for responsible financial services innovation. Now, it's already I'm more just turned off by their need to just cram buzzwords in at the expense of the readability of the sentences. Its mission is to enable a simple global currency. Well, I guess if we're talking about like if there's like the Libra Foundation or the association or whatever, and you could say maybe that's their goal. Their goal is to enable it. But what was that? Thank you very much. I have it behind my donation address, so I didn't see it. Let me see if I can fix that. Let's see. Window capture, image, Linux browser. That's got to be up top. All right. I don't know. I assume dragging it in the sources area of OBS will change the layer it's on, but I don't know for sure. But thank you for that, whoever that was. All right. So is it enabling the currency? We have to use the words enable. We have to use the words empower. We have to use the words financial infrastructure. It's just kind of embarrassing. And the next sentence is even worse. So it says that their plan is to create three things: the blockchain, the cryptocurrency, and smart contract platform. And then they say that together, those three things aim to create a new opportunity. So not new opportunity, just one new opportunity, specifically a new opportunity for some type of innovation. What type of innovation? Financial services innovation, which is already awkward. You're doing that thing where you put a noun before another noun to describe it. It's not, financial service related innovation. It's just financial services innovation. But even worse than that is they qualify it. They say responsible financial services innovation, which is like, well, who decides what is and isn't responsible? Hopefully it's not left up to some arbitrary small group of centrally controlled entities in a permission environment. Guess we'll find out. Next section. Oh, gotta find my mouse. Sweet. Problem statement. The advent of the internet and mobile broadband has empowered billions of people globally to have access to the world's knowledge and information, high-fidelity communications, and a wide range of lower-cost, more convenient services. These services are now accessible using a $40 smartphone from almost anywhere in the world. This connectivity has driven economic empowerment by enabling more people to access the financial ecosystem. Working together, technology companies and financial institutions have also found solutions to help increase economic empowerment around the world. Despite this progress, large swaths of the world's population are still left behind. 1.7 billion adults globally remain outside the financial system with no access to a traditional bank, even though 1 billion have a mobile phone and nearly half a billion have internet access. Now that's not, it's ambiguously worded. I assume that they mean that those 1 billion with a mobile phone and half a billion with internet access are a subset of the 1.7 billion who remain outside of the financial system. I assume more than 1 billion, but maybe not. Maybe only 1 billion people in the world have mobile phones. I would have guessed more than that, but maybe not. And then half a billion have internet access. Either way, it's ambiguous. So, hey, Facebook, just pay me to edit your white paper. You can pay me in Bitcoin Cash. We'll be good to go. Don't even worry about it. We'll have a fantastic sounding white paper so that only the content will be bullshit and not the writing. Sound good? Okay. Next paragraph. For too many, parts of the financial system look like telecommunication networks pre-internet. 20 years ago, the average price to send a text message in Europe was 16 cents per message. Now, everyone with a smartphone can communicate across the world for free with a basic data plan. Back then, telecommunications prices were high but uniform, whereas today, access to financial services is limited or restricted for those who need it most, those impacted by cost, reliability, and the ability to seamlessly send money. Now this, it seems like they kind of directly contradict their own point. They first say, the financial system looks like telecommunication networks pre-internet. And they're saying that the state of the telecommunication networks pre-internet was that costs were uniformly high. Everyone could do it, but it was 16 cents per message. And then they say, actually, nowadays, the financial system is not even uniform. It actually disproportionately is limited for those who need it most. So I don't know what their point is. I don't know if I'm missing their point, if they had a point and they buried it in bullshit, or if they really just don't care and they're just trying to throw filler at us to make it seem like here are all these problems in the world and we can solve them, and here's all this background and history of things were, but things are like they were, and so give us time, and we'll things like the Libra will get us to the future where nowadays the internet is mature, and soon with the Libra electronic currency will be mature. I don't know if they're really even trying to do that or what. Next paragraph. All over the world, people with less money pay more for financial services. Hard-earned income is eroded by fees, from remittances and wire costs to overdraft and ATM charges. Payday loans can charge annualized interest rates of 400% or more, and finance charges can be as high as $30 just to borrow $100. When people are asked why they remain on the fringe of the existing financial system, those who remain unbanked point to not having sufficient funds, high and unpredictable fees, banks being too far away, and lacking the necessary documentation. And so I think that's a pretty accurate, just quick description of problems with the incumbent financial system. I think that's relatively accurate. AKA cryptocurrency for normies, it's like the gaming on a console instead of PC. I'd have to think about that analogy, but I like it for sure. All right. Blockchains and cryptocurrencies have a number of unique properties that can potentially address some of the problems of accessibility and trustworthiness. I mean, sort of. Accessibility is really only an indirect repercussion of blockchain-based things. So, the only reason financial things aren't accessible, it's not a technology thing. It's not like the blockchain has this technology that makes it super accessible. What it does is it has this technology that, as long as it remains censorship resistant, allows it to operate outside of the current forces, powers that be, that make it that purposefully exclude those they can't spy on. So to say that blockchains and cryptocurrencies, address problems with accessibility, well, only indirectly. And if Facebook intends for the Libra to be even remotely compliant, then they'll be nixing that benefit right off the bat. As far as fixing problems of trustworthiness, I mean, again, not really. The blockchain, as a tool to enable electronic cash, is really it's meant to remove trust from the system, right? It's not supposed to make people more trustworthy. Now, the blockchain as an open ledger could allow you to be more transparent about things, but that doesn't really seem like what they're going for here. And it's also sort of like a big leap. Like in the previous paragraph, they're talking about these problems with the current financial system, but then they talk about problems of accessibility and trustworthiness. Accessibility above is talking about banks being too far away and lacking documentation, which isn't solved by the Libra if they intend to be compliant. The only thing it really solves is high and unpredictable fees, which is also solved by other systems. So what the Libra has to offer will probably end up only being, high acceptance if they can manage that. If they can get everywhere to accept it, then sure, there's potentially some quote-unquote good that could come of it, as long as, it enables people to transact. Of course, not being censorship resistant only empowers some smaller percentage of all the people that arguably deserve to be empowered. And that was one sentence. All right, one more sentence. These include distributed governance, which ensures that no single entity controls the network, open access, which allows anybody with an internet connection to participate, and security through cryptography, which protects the integrity of funds. And so again, it's just kind of off base. Distributed governance does, like, ensuring that no single entity controls the network isn't the biggest deal, because if the governance is distributed, but still in a permissioned way, so that only certain people are allowed to participate in the governance, and those governing bodies are still centralized, then you don't have much of a better situation. What's really important is that not only is the governance distributed, it's that it's permissionless. Anyone can start mining Bitcoin at any time, and then they will have a say in what gets hash rate. Whereas distributing your governance to a group that could easily be a cartel, especially given that it is a permissioned system, I don't see the benefit to that. Open access, sure, being able to just bang out a public key right away from, bang out a private key and then have a public key and then create addresses with zero permission. I mean, that's great. But I don't see how they're going to manage that without KYC and AML. KYC being know your customer laws, and AML being anti-money laundering laws. How they're going to get around that while still saying it's open access, anyone can use it, except we're totally going to try to stop criminals from doing it. Good luck with that. And then it says security through cryptography, which protects the integrity of funds. I mean, as long as it's an open ledger or state, as we'll find out later, the cryptography, it makes sure that you can openly prove that when funds are moved, they're moved by somebody who has access to the private key. But it's almost like a shame that they're called cryptocurrencies. What I think would have been much better is if we had another name. Like, I think it should have been focused on proof of work. Now, I don't have a fancy, catchy name like cryptocurrency for proof of work because POW currency or POW cash or something, it doesn't necessarily sound great. But it would have been really nice if we could have emphasized the fact that the breakthrough really was so like distributing the ledger was a means to an end, and the whole point, obviously, how can we create electronic cash without a third party? That was it's kind of the whole point of Bitcoin. Now, there are a lot of really cool repercussions of that people like the fact that then it it potentially takes power away from people who are currently in charge of the financial system and all this stuff, and de-empowers, or whatever the word would be, governments. But really, the point was to create digital cash without a trusted third party. And the main problems they cite in the white paper is cost. They're like, how can we get rid of a trusted third party? Because trusted third parties incur larger costs. So the cryptography wasn't really a huge part of it. And people understood how you could use cryptography in creating a digital currency, at least as is my impression, for much, much, much longer than we had functioning digital currencies. The functioning digital currency showed up when proof of work as a consensus mechanism. Thank you, Anonymous Casher. I appreciate the donation. Things really changed when proof of work as a consensus mechanism was introduced. So, like, oh, we can use cryptography to fix all these problems. Well, I mean, we can use cryptography as a tool, but the main benefit of cryptocurrencies, of the cryptocurrency originally, Bitcoin, was the consensus mechanism. That is solving the double spend problem. Coming to consensus on the state of the ledger was the big deal, not using elliptic curve cryptography to have to sign things and then verify that signatures came from private keys. That's not the big deal. This is going to be long. This is only hopefully the rest of the stuff we'll have less to say about. Good luck with that. Let's see what's going on. Libra facing down on companies that profit on financial frictions. They're talking about none of the revolutionary improvements of true crypto. Yeah, definitely. They definitely have the potential to disrupt the rest of the industry by being slightly better. They can do something that's sort of cryptocurrency-esque and out compete all of the other systems that are currently there, not currently there. So obviously Bitcoin Cash is currently in the system, but I'm thinking as far as all the incumbent players, they have the potential to outcompete them for sure with something like this. Hopefully not something like Bitcoin Cash, but we'll see, because while I would argue that at least there's a potential for them to have serious problems with the service that something like Bitcoin Cash wouldn't have, maybe not a large enough percentage of the users would have those problems, of getting censored, that for Bitcoin Cash to really shine as an obvious alternative. Especially when people are like, well, if I'm not the one being censored, why do I care? Obviously they don't think that consciously, but that's kind of how it always is. They came for X and I didn't speak up because I was not X, and they came for Y and I did not speak up because I was not Y, and they came for me and there's no one left to speak for me, that sort of thing, right? All right, so thank you very much, Anonymous Casher, for 15 cents in BCH. I should maybe come up with a better background for that. Then again, it's part of the tip bitcoin.cash. Maybe I would need bigger borders on the text or something so it's more legible. Because obviously, white text, the black background can be read with anything behind it. It's the universal rule of making text and also memes and image macros. So maybe I'll mention that to Pox. Maybe bigger borders would be good. But I can read it. It's all good. All right. Next. Oh, yeah, this is a great one. But the existing blockchain systems have yet to reach mainstream adoption. That's true. Mass market usage of existing blockchains and cryptocurrencies has been hindered by their volatility and lack of scalability, which have so far made them poor stores of value and mediums of exchange. Well, sure, their adoption has been hindered by volatility. That's certainly just the case, and it's going to be the case for a new asset that is going to be used in some speculative way. I would hope that many people watching are aware that blockchains do not have scalability problems, or at least not anywhere close to the degree that it has been pushed as a narrative by the main sources of content and news and whatever that you read about cryptocurrency. Scalability, the blockchains scale remarkably well. You can get up to Visa level transactions, levels of throughput, transactions per second on home hardware and cheap home hardware. If you're running a node at home, your dinky little processor could handle validating Visa levels of throughput, and that's obviously not going to be the way it is, and it's already not the way it is. Mining is already a specialized business where those who need to do it are benefiting enough from the system that that you shouldn't that it shouldn't be expected that they should be able to do it on just home hardware. Now, certainly for greater privacy and security, businesses of some level, will benefit from running their own nodes. And so, ideally, you keep the burden as low as possible, but that as low as possible. This as possible with a huge fucking asterisk, because as possible without hindering the growth of the system, right? And the scalability problems that everyone refers to when it comes to BTC is an artificially imposed limit on the number of transactions. It's literally just in the code for anyone who doesn't know and who's checking this out. It's just in the code, and it says you are not allowed to have more data in the blocks than this X amount per block. And it's just in the code. There's nothing about the hardware or parts of the software that limit it to the current scalability issues that we're having. There are scalability issues when you come up to like sustained throughput of like, I think it's like 20 times what BTC experiences like at peaks now. Like when they talk about sustained throughput of more than like 20 megabyte blocks, there end up being propagation issues. But even then, I feel like that's old news at this point. We've gotten more scaling breakthroughs since then. So this sentence is unfortunately just total bull. There are not scalability issues, at least none that we've run into anywhere close with blockchain technology. What we have run into is arguably either completely inept developers or, in my opinion, more likely, malicious developers gaining control of the repo and refusing to lift arbitrary limits to create the illusion of a scaling problem when there just isn't one. Boy, oh boy, sentence number 2 in this lovely paragraph. Some projects have also aimed to disrupt the existing system and bypass regulation, as opposed to innovating on compliance and regulatory fronts to improve the effectiveness of anti-money laundering. We believe that collaborating and innovating with the financial sector, including regulators and experts across a variety of industries, is the only way to ensure that a sustainable, secure, trusted framework underpins this new system. And this approach can deliver a giant leap forward towards a lower cost, more accessible, and more connected global financial system. And so, I mean, just making a lower cost, more accessible, global, more connected global financial system sounds great, but you could argue that that's actually in direct contradiction to compliance. The people who make the laws do not benefit from a more accessible, lower cost, globally connected financial system. They benefit from having a monopoly on those services. So there is absolutely zero reason to think that you will do better by complying. Chances are you will just undermine yourself. Now, it'd be great, if in a sort of transitionary period, Facebook's coin explodes, governments crumble, and then people realize, oh, well, Zuckbucks actually kind of suck compared to legit cryptocurrencies. So, we'll then do another transitionary period to legitimately decentralized, permissionless coins. But that doesn't sound like a great option to me. I'd rather just skip the whole Libra coin Zuckbuck period and go straight from fiat everywhere to legit peer-to-peer electronic cash. The opportunity. Let me see. Any government can force any one of the distributed governors to follow their dictates. Yeah, exactly. So like what they think, and what's funny is that any government. So when they talk about responsible financial innovation and they talk about being compliant, it's like, well, if you're going to exist in more than one country, that's a whole new set of rules for every single country you expect to operate in. So are you going to have a different set of rules for every country and restrict who can send to whom? So if you do that, you've kind of ruined the point of making a global currency. And if they try to follow everyone's rules so everyone can send to everybody, you have to follow everyone's rules at once, no matter what country you're in. And so, like, even if we could say that's possible and there were no directly contradictory rules, that would just lead to the absolutely most restricted possible rule set of all rule sets. And so great, now everyone can send money to everyone in the world as long as it follows the law of every country in the world. Good luck with that. Boy, oh boy. The opportunity. As we embark on this journey together, that's just cringeworthy. I hate the wording of this. This is where it's just like, can we just use the words that mean what we're trying to say? instead of using like words like embark and journey. But no, of course we can't. It's got to sound cool, and it's got to be hip. It's got to as we embark on this journey together, we think it is important to share our beliefs to align the community and ecosystem we intend to spark around this initiative. Spark. Is that what usually one does to a community at its inception? Spark it? Usually, like, you spark... I don't even know what you usually figuratively spark, but you don't figuratively spark a community. It's just like, Facebook, what are you doing? Like, I really expected this to be well written. I expected it to be just polished as shit bullcrap, but it's not. It's actually just terribly written buzzword bonanza. All right, so here's their bullet points, their beliefs around which they intend to spark the initiative. We believe that many more people should have access to financial services and to cheap capital. We believe that people have an inherent right to control the fruit of their legal labor. Oh, good. So here we get this issue again, legal labor. Well, legal as opposed to, or as according to whose laws? Good luck sorting that one out, Facebook. And Libra Association founding members, as we'll get to in just a second. The people power profit from the inefficiencies. Yeah, oh yeah. Which is why they oppose cryptos and oppose Libra. And that is why the government can help destroy that. And that's where the argument that Libra can help destroy that resistance comes in. Yeah, that would be neat. It would be neat if, like, Libra... I mean, you could argue, so which would you rather? Both Facebook and the government being able to censor your transactions, or just Facebook? Of course, it's not Facebook. It's not just Facebook. It's, Facebook and a bunch of other founding members, as we'll find out later on in the paper. But if it ends up, would you rather Facebook and the government, or just Facebook? Well, I mean, neither one's good, but if this can kind of jumpstart the crumbling of the government's monopoly on money, that would be pretty cool. Now, what we have to make sure, though, is that it doesn't usher in basically a dystopia where they get such a good stranglehold on global money that legitimately decentralized solutions can't then outcompete them in a post-government monopolized currency world. Cross our fingers, right? We believe that global, open, instant, and low-cost movement of money will create immense economic opportunity and more commerce across the world. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Good luck doing that with what you've come up with. We believe that people will increasingly trust decentralized forms of governance. And yeah, that's another relatively accurate assessment on their part. We do currently have sort of this idea of, like, governance is almost sort of by definition centralized, but it doesn't have to be. We believe that a global currency and financial infrastructure should be designed and governed as a public good. I don't even know what they mean by that. As opposed to what? What would it be designed as if it were not designed as a public good? Private good, but then... I mean, I guess they're just trying to... They're either saying something really obvious, or they're not actually saying anything. I'm not really sure. We believe that we all have a responsibility to help advance financial inclusion, support ethical actors, and continuously uphold the integrity of the ecosystem. So that sounds great until they say support ethical actors. And when they start throwing in qualifiers like ethical, you realize you have to realize that words like ethical have subjective definitions, and Facebook and the Libra consortium, whatever the group of Libra actors will get to decide what ethical is and what isn't ethical. So the moment you bring in qualifications like that, you lose all credibility as a decentralized currency that sort of acts amorally. You're not going to be able to do that if you try to impose some group of people's ethics, unless you're just going to argue, well, there are objective definitions of ethics, and then, all right, well, we'll just argue about that later, I guess. All right, so introducing Libra, we got here. All right, the only way this works is if they get approval, then they can pose this. And this if they don't have this approval, they will get shut down one way or another. This will be government if it is allowed. Yeah, I mean, I guess sort of you're saying by definition, it will be government money because it will have been allowed by the governments that they're in. They have to get the approval to do it, or else they're going to get shut down. And if they do that, then it will be government money. Now, what you could argue is, while it will be in some sense government money, because the government will have had control over whether or not it even came into existence or not. There's the potential that just given the inherent structure that they give it, that it will be very slightly better than like the current form of government controlled money. So for instance, inflation and stuff like that. Currently, at least it's it's all hidden in a black box. The amount of money that's printed is just like, we have no idea how much money is getting pumped into the world every year. And with this, maybe we would know, even if people are like, yeah, that's fine. Facebook coin can be inflated, and we think inflation is a good thing. But at least then, like, you could argue it'll be 100% transparent. Kind of like, every time they print Tether, there's a tweet bot that's like, hey, just so you know, Tether just printed 200 million new Tethers, and go buy some Bitcoin, because we all know what that means. But there is the potential that something like this could be slightly better than purely government controlled money. I definitely don't argue against the potential for that. It could also be worse, though. I don't argue against the potential for that either. All right, introducing Libra. The world truly needs it, guys. Can we just get rid of all these stupid filler words? It makes me cringe and barf. The world truly needs a reliable digital currency and infrastructure that together can deliver on the promise of the Internet of Money. Sure. Securing your financial assets on your mobile device should be simple and intuitive. Moving money around globally should be as easy and cost-effective as, and even more safe and secure than, sending a text message or sharing a photo, no matter where you live, what you do, or how much you earn. The new product innovation and additional entrance to the ecosystem will enable the lowering of barriers to access and cost of capital for everyone and facilitate frictionless payments for more people. It's a terribly worded sentence. It's like syntactically, if you had to put like the parentheses on what things are describing other things, it's terribly ambiguous. Are we saying, okay, new product innovation and additional entrance to the ecosystem will enable the lowering of barriers to access and cost of capital? Or is it saying will enable the lowering of barriers to access and cost of capital? Like, I think there maybe is only one way to read it, but it's still awkward. AF, brah. Kill me. So they're saying, all right, the innovation and additional entrance will, lower barriers. Not sure why. They don't really go into that. Why would more entrance to the ecosystem lower barriers to access? And why would it lower the cost of capital? What does that even mean? Like, and cost of capital. Lower. Or would it just enable the cost of capital? It's enable the lowering of barriers to access and cost of capital. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and skip that sentence because it doesn't make any sense, and it seems like whatever they could be meaning, they don't really explain why. Now is the time to create a new kind of digital currency built on the foundation of blockchain technology, which is ironic because what they've built isn't a blockchain, but sure, the foundation. It's a foundation, guys. It's not actually. It's just a foundation. The mission for Libra is a simple global currency and financial infrastructure that empowers billions of people. Again, that's not a mission. That's a thing. The mission is for Libra to become and enable a simple global currency and financial infrastructure. But, like, did nobody proofread this? Okay, fine. That's a fine goal. Mission. Whatever. Well, I mean, Michael, it's my reactions to it. So it's sort of like, if you were playing, like, a let's play of a video game, it's going to be half as much the person's reaction to it. So if you want to go read the white paper, feel free. But if you want what I think is a reasonable response to it, continue watching. Whether what I'm saying is evangelism or not, I guess I should look up technically what defines evangelism. I mean, I'm saying what I think is the case, and if that's evangelism to you, that's fine. Moving on. All right, so Libra is made up of 3 parts that will work together to create a more inclusive financial system. 1, it is built in a secure, scalable, and reliable blockchain. 2, it is backed by a reserve of assets designed to give it intrinsic value. 3, it is governed by the independent Libra Association tasked with evolving the ecosystem. All right, you've got 3 things. You got the blockchain itself, you got a reserve that gives the token on the blockchain value, and then you've got this Libra Association, which like its job is to evolve the ecosystem, because of course you evolve something. Something doesn't evolve, you evolve it. And that's the least awkward way to use that word. The Libra currency is built on the Libra blockchain. Because it is intended to address a global audience, the software that implements the Libra blockchain is open source, designed so that anyone can build on it and billions of people can depend on it for their financial needs. Imagine an open, interoperable ecosystem of financial services that developers and organizations will build to help people and businesses hold and transfer Libra for everyday use. I'll try imagining that once I wrap my brain around that sentence. Because it is intended to address a global audience, the software that implements the Libra blockchain is open source, designed so that anyone can build on it and billions of people can depend on it for their financial needs. Imagine an open, interoperable ecosystem of financial services that developers and organizations will build to help people and businesses hold and transfer Libra for everyday use. What they're saying is just, hey, just imagine if everybody used it. Okay, Facebook, I'll imagine that. Thank you. With the with the proliferation of smartphones and wireless data, increasingly more people will be online and able to access Libra through these new services. To enable the Libra ecosystem to achieve this vision over time, Ugh, it hurts my soul. To enable the Libra ecosystem to achieve this vision over time, the blockchain has been built from the ground up to prioritize scalability, security, efficiency in storage and throughput, and future adaptability. Keep reading for an overview of the Libra blockchain or read the technical paper. So they really don't explain actually they explain a little bit of what they're calling a blockchain, which isn't even a blockchain, and what they don't explain is what is their supposedly Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism. That's, I guess, 100% in the technical paper. So maybe that'll be good for a future read-through, but I'm not going to mess with that today. So we'll just have to see what little information they give us on the consensus mechanism, which, if I remember correctly, is very little. All right, the unit of currency is called Libra. Libra will need to be accepted in many places and easy to access for those who want to use it. In other words, people need to have confidence that they can use Libra and that its value will remain relatively stable over time. Unlike the majority of cryptocurrencies, Libra is fully backed by a reserve of real assets. A basket of bank deposits and short-term government securities will be held in the Libra reserve for every Libra that is created, building trust in its intrinsic value. So let's take the two most trusted entities in the whole world, banks and governments, and base the value of our currency on basically stock in those things. Recipe for success, definitely success. The Libra reserve will be administered with the objective of preserving the value of Libra over time. Keep reading for an overview of the Libra and the reserve, or read more here. So I guess that's a different thing than the technical paper. Excuse me. The Libra Association is an independent, not-for-profit membership organization headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. The association's purpose is to coordinate and provide a framework for governance for the network. I can't not complain about it. I'm sorry. And provide a framework for governance for the network. It's just not well written, and it makes me angry. The association's purpose is to coordinate and provide a framework for governance for the network and reserve and lead social impact grant making in support of financial inclusion. So saying the association is going to, it has the job of making sure that the things that happen support financial inclusion. So the question that immediately comes to mind is, what are the financial incentives, or regardless of whether it's financial incentives or whatever incentives, what are the incentives to make sure that those who are part of the association actually personally benefit from increasing financial inclusion? Because unless there is definitely an incentive for them to do so, I see no reason to expect why they should. It being in the white paper that it's their job means absolutely nothing. What you need is to show that they're going to personally benefit from the financial inclusion. Else we're just reading an ad that says we're going to make something that's really great. This white paper is a reflection of its mission, vision, and purview. I should really look at what purview means. I'm going to do that right now. Sorry, watchers. Define purview. That's a word I should know. The scope of the influence or concerns of something. Okay. So you could probably almost always just say like its scope, but it's specifically talking about the scope of its influence or concerns. So, all right, cool. And if you didn't know what that means, you know now too. And if you did, you can make fun of me in the comments. The association's membership is formed from the network of validator nodes that operate the Libre blockchain. So that's an important thing. That's the first we've heard about it in the paper so far. The association is going to be formed from those who run validator nodes. Members of the Libra Association will consist of geographically distributed and diverse businesses, nonprofit and multilateral organizations, and academic institutions. The initial group of organizations that will work together on finalizing the association's charter to become founding members upon its completion are, by industry, the payments industry, MasterCard, PayPal, PayU, which is Naspers fintech arm, Stripe, and Visa. The technology and marketplaces people are Booking Holdings, eBay, Facebook / Calibra, I don't know what that is, but Farfetch, Lyft, Mercado Pago, I don't know, Spotify AB, Uber Technologies Incorporated. In telecommunications, we have Iliad, Vodafone Group. In blockchain, we've got Anchorage, Bison Trails, Coinbase Incorporated, Zappo Holdings Limited. In venture capital, we've got Anderson Horowitz, Breakthrough Initiatives, Ribbit Capital, Thrive Capital, Union Square Ventures. From nonprofit and multilateral organizations and academic institutions, we've got Creative Disruption Lab, Kiva, I don't know, Mercy Corps, and Women's World Banking. We hope to have approximately 100 members of the Libra Association by the target launch in the first half of 2020. So there you go. There's a list, at least the starting list of people that will have a say in the future of the Libra. And they're saying like, okay, so it'll be the association's job. The association, which will be made up of representatives from these groups of people. It will be the job of that association to decide how Libra changes and becomes what it's supposed to be. And they've given them the job, which is to make it, say, financially inclusive. That was one of the things they pushed so far. Again, the question is, what makes anyone think that these participants are going to want to follow that job, that job description? Why? What reason do they have to build a more financially inclusive system using their say in the roadmap of the Libra, as opposed to making it serve their own private needs, which I would argue probably involve not allowing it to be more financially inclusive? I guess we'll see. Yep. Facebook teams played a key role in the creation of the Libra Association and the Libra Blockchain, working with the other founding members. While final decision-making authority rests with the association, Facebook is expected to maintain a leadership role through 2019. Facebook created Calibra, a regulated subsidiary to ensure separation between social and financial data and to build and operate services on its behalf on top of the Libra network. So we can be totally confident that the social and financial data is totally separate because Facebook made a subsidiary to deal with it. The amount of trust I had in Facebook, don't worry, it doesn't. The negative 8 billion trust I had in them doesn't get transferred over to Calibra because it's a subsidiary. We can trust them. All right. Let's see. Oh, I closed up not closed. I brought up the thing which covered up the chat. Grant making, aka charity. They're going to tax everyone's value to give this charity. No, I think they're talking about the grant making as far as like the goal is going to be to like get people to build cool stuff on Libra. So where that money is coming from, I didn't really get a hold. I didn't get a feel for from what I read. Maybe it was in there and I missed it. But yeah, the grant making seems like it's going to be specifically for like people outside of the Libra Association who they want to help, spark the community. All right, got to bring up. Close, bring up. Righteous. Sorry, moving some windows around. Live dashboard. So once the Libra network launches, Facebook and its affiliates will have the same commitments, privileges, and financial obligations as any other founding member. As one member among many, Facebook's role in governance of the association will be equal to that of its peers. Blockchains are described as either permissioned or permissionless in relation to their ability to participate as in relation to the ability to participate as a validator node. In a permissioned blockchain, access is granted to run a validator node. In a permissionless blockchain, anyone who meets the technical requirements can run a validator node. In that sense, Libra will start as a permissioned blockchain. To ensure that Libra is truly open and always operates in the best interests of its users, our ambition is for the Libra network to become permissionless. The challenge is that as of today, we do not believe there is a proven solution that can deliver the scale, stability, and security needed to support billions of people and transactions across the globe through a permissionless network. And you could argue that's sort of based on the cultural truth, which is a complete bullshit truth that blockchains don't scale well, when actually they do. And it's not really even the arguments that people make as to why blockchains don't scale, you know, the centralization pressure of having high transaction throughput, that's not really an issue of the network being permissioned versus permissionless. They're kind of unrelated. The permission versus permissionless thing has more to do with censorship resistance than scalability. So it seems like they're just coming up with an excuse. We're making it permissioned at first because we don't think that the things people have come up with so far can scale and be as stable and be as secure. When actually that's not really the issue, even if the scalability were an issue. That's not the issue people claim it is. So, let's see, where did I stop there? One of the association's directives will be to work with the community to research and implement this transition, which will begin within 5 years of the public launch of the Libra blockchain and ecosystem. And again, the people who are in charge of it are supposed to, you know, oversee the transition, but why should we expect them to do that? Is it within their, are they going to have the incentive to make the system better by making it permissionless? If I had to guess, they're going to have power, and then making it permissionless would lead to them having less power. And so why would they do that? Why would we expect them to do that in 5 years? Do we have any reason to believe that they have a reason to do that? As far as I can tell, no. You know, unless it's becoming clear that permissionless blockchains actually provide, you know, substantially better service due to their censorship resistance. But if that's already clear to the point where they're losing competition and need to become permissionless in order to compete, you'd think they'd have already lost at that point. It seems like kind of a far-fetched situation. Essential to the spirit of Libra, in both its permissioned and permissionless state, the Libra blockchain will be open to everyone, any consumer, developer, or business that can use the Libra network, build products on top of it, and add value through their services. Open access ensures low barriers to entry and innovation and encourages healthy competition that benefits consumers. This is foundational to the goal of building more inclusive financial options for the world. It's sort of like, if you say so, be open to everyone. So in its permission state, they're saying it will be open to everyone. But that's so far just an unsubstantiated claim. How can they claim that it's going to be open to everyone and also claim that they're going to work within regulation? It can't be both. It literally can't be both. That's inherently contradictory. So they might say, well, of course we mean everyone that's, you know, being financially responsible and everyone who's, you know, is enjoying the fruit of their legal labor. So as long as you just take that qualifier and apply it through the rest of the white paper, what they're saying isn't necessarily contradictory, but then it sounds a lot less pretty when you realize, oh, so what you're saying is everybody except for the people that we already said aren't allowed to participate implicitly because we said we're going to comply can participate. Everyone but them. The Libra blockchain, which isn't a blockchain. The goal of the Libra blockchain, let me see. If the Libra is backed by reserve, but I cannot exchange the Libra for those reserved, does it even matter if they had twice as many reserves for half as many reserves? I don't see that changing the value. Yeah, they do talk about how later on there's going to be like some mention of how it should be easy via exchanges and different, like, I forget what the word is it clearinghouses or something, that it should be easy to exchange to and from the reserves. Whether it's going to materialize that way is a whole other thing. I mean, Tether was like, yeah, we're backed. It's great, and you can redeem at any time, except of course you can't. And I haven't heard of the last time someone managed to redeem Tethers for legit dollars. So, later on in the paper, if I remember correctly, they do say it will be the plan to make it so that you can redeem the Libra for the underlying assets, or at least for. I'm not sure. It might be. Well, we'll see. We'll see when we get there. I just do remember that there being something about that. All right. The goal of the Libra blockchain is to serve as a solid foundation for financial services, including a new global currency which could meet the daily financial needs of billions of people. Through the process of evaluating existing options, we decide to build a blockchain based on these 3 requirements. Ability to scale to billions of accounts, which requires high transaction throughput, low latency, and an efficient high-capacity storage system. Highly secure to ensure safety of funds and financial data. And flexible, based on these 3 requirements. That's able to scale to billions of accounts is a requirement. Being able to scale to billions of accounts is a requirement. Being highly secure is a requirement. Being flexible is a requirement. Flexible is an adjective. Based on these 3 adjectives. Flexible, so that it can power the Libra's ecosystem's governance as well as future innovation in financial services. The Libra blockchain is designed from the ground up to holistically address these requirements and build on the learnings from existing projects and research, a combination of innovative approaches and well-understood techniques. Excuse me. This next section will highlight 3 decisions regarding the Libra blockchain. 1. Designing and using the Move programming language. 2. Using a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus approach. And 3. Adopting and iterating on widely adopted blockchain data structures. All right. Move is a new programming language for implementing custom transaction logic and smart contracts on the Libra blockchain. Because of Libra's goal to one day serve billions of people, Move is designed with safety and security as the highest priorities. Move takes insights from security incidents that have happened with smart contracts to date and creates a language that makes it inherently easier to write code that fulfills the author's intent, thereby lessening the risk of unintended bugs or security incidents. Specifically, Move is designed to prevent assets from being cloned. It enables resource types that constrain digital assets to the same properties as physical assets. A resource has a single owner, it can be only spent once, and the creation of new resources is restricted. The Move language also facilitates automatic proofs that transactions satisfy certain properties, such as payment transactions only changing the account balances of the payer and receiver. By prioritizing these features, Move will help keep the Libra blockchain secure. By making the developments of critical transaction code easier, Move enables the secure implementation of the Libra ecosystem's governance policies, such as the management of the Libra currency and the network of the validator nodes. All right, let's break a little bit of that down. So the Move language also facilitates automatic proofs that transactions satisfy certain properties, such as payment transactions only changing the account balances of the payer and receiver. So it seems like they've come up with effectively their own like scripting language, right? That you can do probably similar things to either Bitcoin scripting language or maybe even stuff like Ethereum type stuff, but it's got just a bunch of checks in it, that make sure that what you're doing is probably what you want to do. Whether creating their own programming language for it was necessary to do something like that, I don't really know. I don't know the specifics of it. There's one thing that caught my eye though. Well, I'm not going to worry about it. All right. All right. It says enables the secure implementation of the Libra ecosystem's governance policies, but they don't say why. So how is Move this programming language that you're going to use to do all the transaction logic going to affect the governance? They just say it will. So it's like, oh sure, Facebook, that's what it'll do. move will accelerate the evolution of the Libra blockchain protocol and any financial innovations built on top of it. We anticipate that the ability for developers to create contracts will be opened up over time in order to support the evolution and validation of Move. And I don't really know what they're even saying there. What's the timeline? They're saying the ability to create contracts will be opened up over time from now until around the release of the currency, or it won't be available when the currency is officially released, and then will slowly be introduced after that. We don't know. They don't tell us. To facilitate agreement among all validator nodes on the transactions to be executed and the order in which they are executed, the Libra blockchain adopted the BFT, this is the Byzantine fault-tolerant approach, by using the Libre BFT consensus protocol. This approach builds trust in the network because BFT consensus protocols are designed to function correctly, even if some validator nodes, up to 1/3 of the network, are compromised or fail. This class of consensus protocols also enables high transaction throughput, low latency, and a more energy-efficient approach to consensus than proof of work used in some other blockchains. There's a mouthful. So saying, now I don't know the specifics of how Byzantine fault tolerance works, or my assumption is that it comes from the Byzantine generals problem, and the issue of having participants in a system that are potentially adversarial. But we, at this point, without reading their more in-depth paper on the technical stuff, we just have to take the word. Yeah, it works up to 1/3 of participants, acting as we expect them to. And they say it's more energy efficient, but given that it's not proof of work, it makes you wonder then, well, one, of course it's not proof of work because it's going to be a permissioned blockchain, at least to start anyway. And then it makes you wonder, well then, so is each node just going to have an equal say, each of these validator nodes? Or is it actually going to be some, proof of stake, proof of something else? All we know is that they're saying that is that it's Byzantine fault tolerant, up to 1/3 of the nodes not working. And we don't really get more than that. In order to securely store transactions, data on the Libra blockchain is protected by Merkle trees, a data structure used by other blockchains that enables the detection of any changes to existing data. Unlike previous blockchains, which view the blockchain as a collection of blocks of transactions, the Libra blockchain is a single data structure that records the history of transactions and states over time. What that means, I don't really know, unless they just mean it's a big ledger where it's updated instead of saying add this transaction to the ones that have happened, just take people's account balances and update them. At which point, one, why are you calling this a blockchain? This is not even remotely close to anything that would be worth calling a blockchain. And nope, that's my only thing. I don't have a 2. This implementation simplifies the work of applications accessing the blockchain, allowing them to read any data from any point in time and verify the integrity of that data using a unified framework. So they talk about using Merkle trees. So maybe what they're saying is that it'll just be one big data structure, and then as coins and stuff are spent, it gets added to the bottom end. Thank you very much, Satoshi. Who would have known? He just revealed himself. Appreciate the donation. It maybe is saying that the Merkle tree will, of course, the whole point of the Merkle tree is that you follow it up and then you get the hash at the top, right? So unless they're saying that you can keep adding stuff to the bottom of it and the top, and the hash at the top will just keep getting updated and somehow refer to the previous hash of the entire state, maybe that's the case again. And I guess I'd have to read the more in-depth paper. But regardless of any fancy way that they decide to do this, it seems pretty clear that it's not a blockchain. It's just not one at all. All right. Did I read that last thing? The implementation simplifies? Yes. The Libra blockchain is pseudonymous and allows users to hold one or more addresses that are not linked to their real-world identity. This approach is familiar to many users, developers, and regulators. The Libra Association will oversee the evolution of the Libra blockchain protocol and network, and it will continue to evaluate new techniques that enhance privacy in the blockchain while considering concerns of practicality, scalability, and regulatory impact. Now, that last part there is probably going to be kind of the what's the word, crux of the whole situation, right? they intend to be regulatorily compliant. They intend to work within the framework of the current established financial system. How are you going to do that if it's pseudonymous? How are you going to make it so that absolutely anyone can just poof, create a wallet out of nowhere and then receive money when you expect to be compliant? I mean, they could just say, they could claim ignorance basically, but then like at any point, when a government provides them with proof that if someone managed to accidentally de-anonymize themselves and can then be proven to be doing illegal activity, maybe at that point Facebook would say, well, yeah, we're pseudonymous and anyone can use it, but if a government comes to us and says you're doing illegal stuff, the Libra Association can vote to lock your funds or something. Maybe that will be the case, and they'll just say like that anyone can use it because it's pseudonymous, but if you manage to break your anonymity, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to close your account. Yeah, I'm thinking all of them. But whichever ones, probably more accurately, whichever ones would like have the sway to call up the Libra Association and be like, hey, if you want to remain legal in our country, you need to close this account because we found out that it's doing illegal activity. And at which point, of course, the government can make up whatever they want, and it becomes pretty much controlled by the government, which would be unfortunate. Sounds rather dystopian. Excuse me. And it says, for more details, read the technical paper on the Libra blockchain. Detailed information is also available on the Move programming language and the Libra BFT consensus protocol. We've open sourced an early preview of the Libra testnet, with accompanying documentation. The testnet is still under development, and APIs are subject to change. Our commitment is to work with the open. I'm losing it. Our commitment is to work in the open with the community and hope you will read, build, and provide feedback. Now, they keep talking about the community. It'll be interesting to see whether there is a community at all, let alone the community. Oh, boy. I'm missing anything? Okay. The Libra currency and reserve. Now, are we really only, a little further than halfway down the document? Let's see. Libra currency and reserve is where I'm at. Can I not? Okay, there we go. All right. Keep on trucking through it. Libra currency and reserve. We believe that the world needs a global digital native currency that brings together the attributes of the world's best currencies: stability, low inflation, wide global acceptance, and fungibility. The Libra currency is designed to help with these global needs, aiming to expand how money works for more people around the world. Excuse me. So they did just mention inflation. They said low inflation. So they're going to, I guess, allow inflation to some degree. So does that mean, well, okay, so everything's supposed to be fully backed. So I'm not even really sure what they would mean by that. What if X country requires Libra to divulge every transaction associated with Israel? Can they say no? Which governments can they ignore? Okay. What if X country requires Libra to divulge every transaction associated? Well, I mean, I guess that depends on, like, would Libra know which transactions are associated with Israel or not? I mean, I guess that's more of a, I guess they could tell, like, it depends on whether they can tell, like, what IP address transactions are coming from, right? But if I had to guess, it would, like, if some country, if the Libra Association has access to information, like what countries certain transactions are originating from, and a country has enough sway, like if a country's saying we're going to make Libra illegal in our country if you don't do this, if that gives them enough sway over the association to think like, well, it's better off for the Libra to remain legal in this country than to respect the privacy of our users, I'm sure they'll do it. I have no doubt that they would just say, fine, all right, here's all the information we got. Whether that's possible, I'm not sure, though. Given, like, so they're validator nodes, and then so assume the nodes receive the transactions. I can only assume, and then they'll have received them from somewhere. So I guess that the nodes will have information at least on from where they received the transactions, and that if that's enough identifying information, then I'm sure a government could force them, could strong arm them, could force them to give it over. Not 100% sure though, mostly because I am ignorant, just ignorant enough of how the routing of data on the internet works that I don't know how much information they'd have by default just by running the nodes. Right. Libra is designed to be a stable digital currency that will be fully backed by a reserve of real assets, the Libra Reserve, and supported by a competitive network of exchanges buying and selling Libra. That means anyone with Libra has a high degree of assurance that they can convert their digital currency into local fiat currency based on an exchange rate, just like exchanging one currency for another when traveling. This approach is similar to how other currencies were introduced in the past. To help instill trust in a new currency and gain widespread adoption during its infancy, it was guaranteed that a country's notes could be traded in for real assets, such as gold. Instead of backing the Libra with gold, though, it will be backed by a collection of low volatility assets, such as bank deposits and short-term government securities and currencies from stable and reputable central banks. Stable. Reputable. Central banks. Double also known as I don't doubt that, like, at least in the short term, that could very well be much more stable than a lot of other things. It just kind of cracks me up because if there are two things that I'm confident are biting the dust in the next, hopefully 10, maybe 50, if not, 100 or several hundred years, it's the governments and central banks. So that's kind of funny. Now, what I'd like to know is whether this is a remotely this depiction of the history of how currencies were formed is remotely accurate. They say currencies were introduced in their early days by being backed just to get them out there, just so people would trust them, and then they took and then people would get rid of the backing. They make it sound like when someone creates a currency, they usually in the beginning back it just so that people trust it and then stop backing it. Whereas my general impression is that that's not the case. It starts out being backed because it's more convenient than trading the actual stuff, and then it's basically pulling the wool over everyone's eyes as they slowly stop backing it, and everyone just kind of keeps using it as normal, and the government basically gets to win twice over by printing it for free and by getting rid of the reserves that were once backing it and benefiting from that. Maybe someone can point out in the comments whether that's an accurate depiction of the history of most currencies, if not any currencies. Sorry, I should read this out loud. Therefore, Libra must ignore some countries. Countries have goals and requirements that are highly incompatible. Yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of something I touched on just before. It was I sort of point out, even if you could argue that they are all 100% compatible, if Libra tried to cooperate with all of them, they would just end up with a ridiculously restrictive set of rules, such that it would be useful to almost nobody. And it is very likely the case that there would be directly incompatible rule sets from different countries, so that Libra has to ignore one of them. And at that point, it just becomes probably which countries have the most power over Libra as far as its adoption and use are concerned. The U.S. would probably be huge. China would probably be huge. Some tiny country in, I don't know, Central America, Libra Association might not care so much. In which case, that'll probably be those countries that just end up making it illegal. And then I guess then it'll be interesting to see what Libra would do in that case. Would they just say, well, people are going to use it or not, and it's not our problem now because you made it illegal, but we don't think it should be illegal? Or will they try to comply in that situation and say, okay, you made Libra illegal, so we'll do our best to help you enforce that as long as, I don't know, we get some payment for the service or something? I don't know. I don't have a clue how that would play out. You can make the same statement about BC. Supported by competitive network by exchanges buying and selling. That is really not the same thing as exchanging for their service. You would say the same thing about BTC. Yeah, no, you're right. They said through buying, selling of exchanges. Let me keep going. I feel like they say something about the reserves at some point and it coming and going from the reserves, but maybe I'm just misremembering. All right, it's important to highlight that this means Libra will not always be able to convert to the same amount of a given local currency, i.e. Libra is not a peg to a single currency. Rather, as the value of the underlying assets move, the value of one Libra in any local currency may fluctuate. However, the reserve assets are being chosen to minimize volatility, so holders of Libra can trust that the currency's ability to preserve value over time. Oh, read that wrong, that's right. The assets in the Libra reserve will be held by a geographically distributed network of custodians with investment-grade credit rating to provide both security and decentralization of the assets. All right, so they're just doing their best to make their stablecoin legit, or at least they're saying that they're going to do their best to make their stablecoin legit. The assets behind Libra are the major difference between it and many existing cryptocurrencies that lack such intrinsic value and hence have prices that fluctuate significantly based on expectations. Libra is indeed a cryptocurrency, though, and by virtue of that, it inherits several attractive properties of these new digital currencies. The ability to send money quickly, the security of cryptography, and the freedom to easily transmit funds across borders. Of course, again, can we just not, I wish we didn't call them cryptocurrencies, because it's like, cryptocurrencies are special because you can send money quickly, and they're secure because of cryptography. You don't need cryptography if you have a centralized database, and that's what this is looking like it's going to be. In fact, blockchains are remarkably inefficient compared to centralized databases, at least when you look at just the work being done. Now, obviously, to run a centralized database, you need a centralized organization, and people, have to run that organization. So maybe overall it actually balances out or actually flips in the direction, and blockchains are more efficient. But at least as far as the tech is concerned, blockchains are way less efficient than centralized solutions. So being able to send money quickly, I mean, yes and no. With the trusted party, you can just run a centralized database and have it be literally instant. Whereas with blockchains, it's a spectrum, right, of instantaneity? No, that's definitely not a word. Instantaneousness, depending on your risk aversion, right? And I've talked about this in other videos where, you talk about accepting zero conf. You can do it, but you can also decide not to, depending on your trust in the system and the amount of risk that you want to take on, and also given the amount of money you're receiving. If you're receiving $2 billion, I would wait for a couple confirmations. But if you're receiving $10, I wouldn't worry about it, because someone would have to make a ton of $10 transactions all at the same time. I mean, a ton of them, in order to make it worth, having $100,000 of mining equipment in your basement for the chance of mining the next block and double spending those payments. So where am I going with this? Right. Saying it inherits the attractive properties of digital currencies. But the ones it mentions aren't the attractive properties. The attractive properties of digital currencies come from the lack of a third party. The lack of a third party allows it to be cheap, but it's not really it's not the speed. The cryptography is a means to an end. You need to use cryptography in a decentralized system because you don't have other means of verifying you are who you're saying you are, and that you have ownership of the funds that you're saying you have ownership over. And the freedom to easily transmit funds across borders, yes, that actually is one of the benefits of it being decentralized without a third party, because then a third party can't be compromised and be told, no, you're not allowed to send that across the borders. But it seems like actually that's kind of one of the aspects where the Libra is not going to do so well, because if the moment you break any anonymity, or even just if a government decides to strong arm the Libra Association, they say this address no good anymore. What are they going to do? If the government has enough say, then you all of a sudden it's not really a borderless currency anymore. No transactions in and out of X country. Interest on the reserve assets will be used to cover the costs of the system, ensure low transaction fees, pay dividends to investors who provided capital to jumpstart the ecosystem, read the Libra Association here, and support for the growth and adoption. All right, let me read that again. Interest on the reserve assets will be used to cover the cost of the system. So interest on the reserve assets. So are they saying they're going to be, the reserve is going to be lending out the assets, Or are they saying that the reserve is just going to be holding the assets and paying them to whom? Not really clear. It seems like the only thing that they could mean is that the Libra Reserve will have like control of the assets and then lend them out to others and get interest on that and use that to pay for running the system. But at that point, isn't it not fully backed anymore? They've lent out the reserves. So either way, it doesn't sound great. The rules for allocating interest on the reserve will be set in advance and will be overseen by the Libra Association, because I'm sure their incentives are totally going to be in the right place for that, right? Users of Libra do not receive a return from the reserve. Okay. For more on the reserve policy and the details of the Libra currency, please read here. All right. Well, I'm not going to click that. The Libra Association. And yeah, it looks like they didn't go into being able to exchange stuff from the reserve. Maybe it's later in the paper, but maybe I legit just totally misremembered. All right. So the reserve aspect is being double spent. I mean, I don't know if that's like being double spent is really the way to describe it. It seems just more it's being fractional reserved. Which at what point, like, what about when it's all lent out? What if it's 100%? What if the fraction is 0 as far as what's left in the reserve? What do you do then? I don't know. Right. The Libra Association. To make the mission of Libra a reality, a simple global currency and financial infrastructure that empowers billions of people, the Libra Blockchain. That's a stupid appositive. It's like it's describing reality. To make the mission of Libra a reality, a simple global currency and financial infrastructure that empowers billions of people, the Libra Blockchain and Libra Reserve need a governing entity that is comprised of diverse and independent members. This governing entity is the Libra Association, an independent, not-for-profit membership organization headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. Switzerland has a history of global neutrality and openness to blockchain technology, and the association strives to be a neutral international institution, hence the choice to be registered there. The association is designed to facilitate the operation of the Libra blockchain, to coordinate the agreement amongst its stakeholders, the network's validator nodes, in their pursuit to promote, develop, and expand the network, and to manage the reserve. All right, so that's also a big old mouthful. What is the association designed to facilitate? The operation of the blockchain. Just like, why is the association operating the blockchain? Shouldn't that be a nodes thing? And I mean, I realize that the association is made up of people who run the nodes, but don't you already have a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism for operating the blockchain? Again, just a lot of unanswered questions here. They're also supposed to coordinate the agreement among its stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders exactly? People who have invested in the Libra or provided capital for its reserves? I don't know what they mean by that. The network's validator nodes and they're saying that the stakeholders are the network's validator nodes. Oh, right, because they had to pay a bunch of money to become nodes, right? If I'm remembering correctly. Okay, so the coordinate agreement. So the association is designed to coordinate the agreement among its stakeholders. Again, why do you have to coordinate the agreement among the stakeholders, the validator nodes, if you have a Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism? Why do you need an association? And finally, their goal is to expand the network and manage its reserve, or promote, develop, and expand the network. So they have the job of basically being, the Bitcoin Foundation or whatever, but for the Libra, which you could say is fine, at least because they're the ones who run the nodes. They're the ones who are supposed to be sort of invested, but of course, in what way are they invested? Not the same way miners are in a proof of work blockchain. So whether it's really a benefit at all to have this officially appointed association, and whether it's not totally redundant to the idea of just letting like nodes decide things and fund things independently, I can't really tell. But then they're supposed to manage the reserve, which I guess is like the one thing that maybe you would want an association for. But then again, why couldn't you come up with a decentralized way to do it via the nodes? Nodes managing reserves in a decentralized way. I don't know. Maybe that's too hard. All right. Okay. The association is governed by the Libra Association Council, which is comprised of one representative per validator node. Together, they make decisions on the governance of the network and reserve. Initially, this group consists of the founding members, businesses, nonprofit and multilateral organizations, and academic institutions from around the world. All decisions are brought to the council, and major policy or technical decisions require the consent of 2/3 of the votes, the same supermajority of the network required by the BFT consensus protocol. Again, so why are these things being decided by this association and not just like being voted on by the nodes and then implemented or not implemented? It just seems not even just over-engineered, like redundantly engineered. What is the point? Just to give it a face? Oh, we have nodes, but then we have an association. Maybe that's the point. Like nodes are scary and associations are not. I don't really know. 50% fractional reserve Facebook users spend funds, and borrower paying interest on Libra reserves spend the funds. And borrowers paying interest on Libra reserves spends the funds. Do I follow that? 50% fractional reserve. Facebook user spends funds, and borrower paying interest on Libra reserves spends the funds. I don't follow. If you're willing to rephrase that, AA, I appreciate it. And I will try to comment on it, or at least read it out loud and bang my head against the wall until I know what you mean. All right. Through the association, the validator nodes align on the network's technical roadmap and development goals. Whoa. Thank you very much, Anonymous Casher. I appreciate the donation. I also should change that sound effect because it scared the crap out of me. All right. Let's see. Through the association, did I read the top part above that? The association is governed, which is comprised. Man, I don't even know. I'm going to start though. The association is governed by the Libra Association Council. Okay, the association exists, and it's governed by the Association Council, which is comprised of one representative per validator node. So there's the association, and I guess all those different founding members are all sort of part of the association together, but then the council has representatives. And those representatives come one per validator node. Together, they make decisions on the governance of the network and reserve. Initially, the group consists of the founding members, businesses, nonprofits, and multilateral organizations and academic institutions from all around the world. All decisions are brought to the council, and major policy or technical decisions require the consent of 2/3 of the votes, the same supermajority of the network required. Oh, I did read this, but that's fine. Required of the BFT consensus protocol. Right, so again, it seems like, yeah, it just seems super redundant. Like they're just doing it to not save face, but to have face, to look like, we've got this association, it takes care of things, when you could just do it via the network. Through the association, the validator nodes align on the network's technical roadmap and development goals. In that sense, it is similar to other not-for-profit entities, often in the form of foundations, which govern open source projects. As Libra relies on growing distributed community, as Libra relies on a growing distributed community of open source contributors to further itself, the association is a necessary vehicle to establish guidance as to which protocols or specifications to develop and to adopt. And that seems just a totally unsubstantiated claim. They're saying because it relies on a community of open source contributors, therefore the association is necessary to guide which protocols or specifications to develop and adopt. Why is it necessary? Because it's a community of open source contributors. If it weren't open source, it wouldn't need the guidance. Well, I mean, maybe, but doesn't that potentially void the benefit of it being open source? If you have an association that then has the responsibility / privilege of guiding the protocol development, so great, anyone can contribute, and then just like Bitcoin Core today, anyone can contribute, and only what a select group of people wants to get into the code will get into the code. So what's the point? Basically, instead of it being an open source project that's cool, it ends up being an open source project where they're just basically asking for free work. Hey, would you do some work for us? It would really benefit us, but only do the work we want. Because obviously we can just veto anything that you want to get in because we're the Libra Association and we decide, we guide. The Libra Association also serves as the entity through which the Libra Reserve is managed, and hence the stability and growth of the Libra economy are achieved. Do you achieve stability and growth? I guess. Whatever. The association is the only party able to create, mint, and destroy, burn Libra. Coins are only minted when authorized resellers, that's the word, it wasn't like clearinghouse or something, it was talking about resellers. Coins are only minted when authorized resellers have purchased those coins from the association with fiat assets to fully back the new coins. Coins are only burned when the authorized resellers, authorized resellers, is saying these resellers do have to be authorized. So it's not like an open system that anyone can lead to the cashing in and cashing out of Libra. Since the authorized resellers will always be able to sell Libra coins to the reserve at a price equal to the value of the basket, the Libra Reserve acts as a buyer of last resort. Since they will always be able to. I think what they mean instead of since is if. If the authorized resellers will always be able to sell Libra coins to the reserve at a price equal to the value of the basket, the Libra Reserve will act as a buyer of last resort. These activities of the association are governed and constrained by a reserve management policy that can be changed by a supermajority of the association members. So the reserve management policy isn't even set in stone. It can be changed by a supermajority of the association members. Association members who arguably have no incentive not to totally screw the system in their favor. Sounding really solid. In these early years of the network, there are additional roles that need to be performed on behalf of the association. The recruitment of founding members to serve as validator nodes, fundraising to jumpstart the ecosystem, the design and implementation of incentive programs to propel the adoption of Libra, including the distribution of such incentives to founding members, and the establishment of the association's social impact grant-making program. So it's got a lot of stuff to do, especially early on, the association does. Again, I can't help but point out every time what their job is every time they mention what the association's job is, I can't help but point out that I don't see the incentive there yet for them. What is the incentive for the association to do all these things that you're saying that they're going to do? If they I guess what I'm wondering is, one, it's sort of the first half of that is, do they even have an incentive to make Libra successful? But then two, if they manage to make Libra successful, then what is the incentive to keep them from totally screwing it over at that point to benefit themselves immensely by, say, not allowing it to become a permissionless system, and by, basically having a monopoly on global internet money, and then using that to screw over the underprivileged in the world even worse than governments are doing today. What's to prevent that? And not even just what's to prevent that, what's making it so that they would not benefit from doing that? And so far, I don't have an answer. An additional goal of the association is to develop and promote an identity standard. We believe that decentralized and portable digital identity is a prerequisite to financial inclusion and competition. So, digital identity stuff has the potential to be really cool, but arguing that it's a prerequisite to financial inclusion and competition, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not having an identity is actually a prerequisite, or at least the option to not have an identity is a prerequisite to financial inclusion and competition. And we can only hope that it won't all of a sudden switch a couple years in to requiring you to have this open identity standard to participate in the system. An important objective of the Libra Association is to move towards increasing decentralization over time. It's a goal stated in the white paper. Give me the incentives. This decentralization ensures that there are low barriers to entry for both building on and using the network. It's so awkwardly worded, I hate it. This decentralization ensures that there are low barriers to entry for both building on and using the network, and improves the Libra's ecosystem's resilience over the long term. Okay, so not only is that worded terribly, I don't see why it would be true. Why is the increasing decentralization, why would that lower the barrier to entry? What about the increased decentralization lowers the barrier to entry. Don't you need low barriers to entry to increase decentralization? Wouldn't it kind of go the other way around? If you want more people to participate in the decentralized nature of the system, you need to have a low barrier to entry. And also, why would it lower the barriers to entry? Well, it says lower barrier to entry for both building on and using the network. So why would that be the case for either of those things? I don't know. I don't get it, Facebook. As discussed above, the association will develop a path towards permissionless governance and consensus on the Libra network. The association's objective will be to start this transition within 5 years, and in doing so will gradually reduce the reliance on the founding members. And I'm sure they'll be totally fine with that. In the same spirit, the association aspires to minimize the reliance on itself as the administrator of the Libra Reserve. Okay, so they plan to not be in charge of the reserve. But, I mean, they're saying that they eventually want the reserve to be managed in a decentralized way. Do they have any reason to believe that that's possible? Would it all be run like via fancy smart contracts that may or may not be secure as they built them in their fancy new scripting move programming language? We don't know. We just know that it's the plan. There's a lot of plan in this paper, but very little reason for us to believe that the plan will happen as they're describing it. It's almost like, not really like a white paper as much as it is like an idea for a white paper. And of course, I might not really have a great impression for what a white paper usually is. But this seems far too speculative and not really hand wavy. They don't even hand wave away anything. They just claim things that seem like that are worded like they're self-evident as to how it will happen. But so far, like I said, I see no reason why it would happen the way they're saying it will. All right. What's next for Libra? This is the home stretch, fellas. Today, we are publishing this document outlining our goals for Libra and launching Libra.org as a home for the association and all things Libra. It will continue to be updated over the coming months. We are also open sourcing the code for the Libre Blockchain, which is not a blockchain, and launching Libra's initial testnet for developers to experiment with and build upon. There is much left to do before the target launch in the first half of 2020. Libra Blockchain. Over the coming months, the association will work with the community to gather feedback on the Libra Blockchain prototype and bring it to a production-ready state. In particular, this work will focus on ensuring the security, performance, and scalability of the protocol and implementation. A private key is the only requirement for financial inclusion on BCH. Amen. The Libra Association will construct well-documented APIs and libraries to enable users to interact with the Libra blockchain. The Libra Association will create a framework for the collaborative development of the technology behind the Libra blockchain using the open source methodology. Procedures will be created for discussing and reviewing changes to the protocol and software that support the blockchain. Of course, they're going to create this framework for the collaborative development, which then they will still have a final say over. It's the association that decides what protocol changes happen. So great, they're going to have a methodology for changing things, and then only will change the things they want to. All right. The association will perform extensive testing of the blockchain, which ranges. The testing will range. Whatever. The association will perform extensive testing of the blockchain, which range from tests of the protocol to constructing a full-scale test of the network in collaboration with entities such as wallet services and exchanges to ensure the system is working before launch. The association will work to foster the development of the Move language and determine a path for third parties to create smart contracts once language development has stabilized after the launch of the Libra ecosystem. Okay, so they're saying that the language development stabilization will occur after the launch of the Libra ecosystem. So there will not be smart contract capabilities at launch. And I guess the Move language I guess all transactions, like the most basic of transactions, will probably be written in Move, and they'll just be really simple, but they'll be probably predefined. And then everyone will use those standard ones, and then opening up the language to others will happen later. Or maybe not. Maybe there will be like sort of basic transaction types, and then like scripting on top of that. I don't know. How much of that how much that is analogous to Bitcoin, I'm also not sure, because well, obviously, with Bitcoin, everything is a transaction, and even like pay to public key hash. That's like, it's written in the scripting language, isn't it? I mean, someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, but my impression is that's like written using little bits of like the opcodes and scripting and stuff. So how they're saying what they mean when it's like not when the smart contract platform, the language of it, how it's going to be released after the launch of the coin itself, I'm not really sure. Together with the community, the association will research the technological challenges on the path to a permissionless ecosystem so that we can meet the objective to begin the transition within 5 years of the launch. Of course, if you actually do any research on the technological challenges on the path to a permissionless ecosystem, you realize that they're like the ones that are actually in the way are currently being worked on, like, and mostly by the people working on Bitcoin Cash, and that the technological challenges that people believe exist in blockchains actually don't exist and are a myth perpetuated by Bitcoin Core hijackers, effectively. But fact check me on that. Google scaling debate, Google censorship that's been required, censorship in our Bitcoin and Bitcoin talk and all this stuff. Don't take my word for it. Look up my post on how I was banned from our Bitcoin for being extremely reasonable, because like people were banned from our Bitcoin for being like douchebags. Not that being douchebags should be a bannable offense, but like it's kind of hard to like say like, oh, it's censorship when like, well, they could argue you're harassing or whatever. But just check the post I made about the process by which I was banned from our Bitcoin, I think is pretty unambiguously messed up, because I make a point to be exceptionally reasonable, and made a point to be exceptionally reasonable on our Bitcoin, and still managed to get banned. So look at my Reddit account, reddit.com/ is it /user or /u? I don't remember. 8180. And I've got a post on there somewhere, how to get banned from our Bitcoin by being extremely reasonable. So that's my little tangent on that. The reserve. Sorry. Here we go. Back to the white paper. Fact check. Yes. BT devs are hijackers. Yes. The association will work to establish a geographically distributed and regulated group of global institutional custodians for the reserve. The association will establish operational procedures for the reserve to interact with authorized resellers, ensure high transparency and auditability. So that's another thing. Like, okay, if they do that, then I guess there will be less danger for it being, just fractional reserving the heck out of it and screwing over anybody that expects it to actually be backed. But Tether said that they were going to be audited, and if you ask people who like believe Tether, they say they have been audited. They've released papers with signatures on them that aren't audits, and by any stretch of the imagination. And Facebook could probably much more effectively pull the wool over our eyes by faking some amount of high transparency and auditability. The association will establish policies and procedures that establish how the association can change the composition of the reserve basket. So they're going to be able to like switch stuff in and out, as long as they can agree that it's about worth what the thing they took out was. And that seems like a super safe, definitely not slippery slope option at all. The Libra Association. We will work to grow the Libra Association Council to around 100 geographically distributed and diverse members, all serving as the initial validator nodes in Libra Blockchain. So there they picked an arbitrary number. I mean, 100 just probably sounds great. Yeah, 100 sounds about right for a sufficiently decentralized group of people. But like, why? Why 100? Why? Just because it sounds good, probably. They're probably given the spectrum of censorship resistance, is some amount of geographically distributed nodes with certain percentage of the hash power that would lead to, you know, an acceptable amount of censorship resistance. But if anyone who pulls out a number like that and tells you that that's their goal, I think we should be very skeptical of their decision to assign a number as a goal for any reason. And they don't really even say why 100. They're just like, our goal is to get to 100. But it's sort of implicit that like 100 then is a good number. Our goal is to get to 100 because 100 is about right, I guess. The association will develop and adapt a comprehensive charter and set of bylaws for the association on the basis of the currently proposed governance structure. We will recruit a managing director for the association and work with him or her to continue hiring for the association's executive team. So the association is going to have jobs like a managing director in addition to the council. Who hires them? The association, I guess. The association will hire the people who work for the association but aren't part of the association, or are part of the association but aren't part of the council. I don't know, man. We will identify social impact partners aligned with our joint mission, and we'll work with them to establish a social impact advisory board and social impact program. How to get involved. Do I want to read this? No, I don't. I'm just going to skip to their conclusion. You can read it if you want. This is the goal for Libra, a stable currency built on a secure and stable open source blockchain, that's not a blockchain, backed by a reserve of real assets and governed by an independent association. Our hope is to create more access to better, cheaper, and open financial services, no matter who you are, where you live, what you do, or how much you have. We recognize that the road to delivering this will be long, arduous, and won't be achieved in isolation. It will take coming together and forming a real movement around this pursuit. Again, you don't need to say real movement. It just makes it sound like you're trying to sound cool. It will take coming together and forming a real movement around it. It will take coming together and forming a movement around this pursuit. It just makes you sound like a reasonable person. But no, gotta be real, super real, extra real. Why didn't they say very real, or very, very real, or very, very, very real? We hope you'll join us and help turn this dream into a reality for billions of people around the world. Well, the most praise I can give this white paper is that they didn't use the word synergy once. And for that, I am grateful, sort of, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't really have a takeaway, because I think most of what I wanted to say has been said as I read through it. I mean, it just seems like, one, very buzzwordy. I'm going to do it. So I just said I wasn't going to give like a overview takeaway. I'm going to do it. One, it's buzzwordy and redundant and unnecessary. All the stuff that they're using to say it's going to be really cool isn't the reason that blockchains are cool, and they're sort of doing everything all over again. Two, they definitely rely heavily on the propaganda bullshit around blockchains already, like scalability issues that don't exist. And three, seems like the incentives are not going to be in the right place, or at least we have no reason to assume that the incentives will be in the right place. Maybe they've got that all figured out. They're like, oh, dude, incentives? Yeah, we got that all figured out. We just didn't put it in the white paper. But thank you very much, Bcast. Appreciate the donation. Yeah, we've got all this incentive stuff figured out. We figured people just wouldn't want to hear about that because it's boring. But here's a whole paper on how the incentives are going to be lined up for the participants of the association, and how they're going to personally benefit from making it more decentralized in the future as we open up to a permissionless blockchain. I just highly doubt that that's the case. It seems more like they're just talking a big talk, and you know, it could very well be that the Libra will be a net positive. Either by at least taking the power away somewhat from governments, because maybe at some point it will be Facebook strong-arming governments and not the other way around. You know, especially when governments lose their hold on the control of the money supply, which is the source of a lot of their power, it will end up being the case that they won't really have much of a choice but to allow their citizens to transact in Libra, and then use just the openness of and traceability probably of the Libra blockchain to more effectively enforce taxes or something. I don't know. Where was I going with that? Not sure. guess the point was, all right, there's the potential for it to go well. So it could take away power from the governments in some ways, and then lead to a more effective transition to legitimately peer-to-peer, decentralized, permissionless currencies. That said, I also think it's possible that it could make things way, way, way worse. And so, as much as there are two possibilities, one, it could make things better, two, it could make things worse. I think we should go ahead and assume it's going to make things way worse, so that we can light a fire under our own butts and get legit peer-to-peer cash for the world, out to the world, because that has, I think, unambiguous potential to make the world a better place, as opposed to suck bucks, which may or may not. Good luck.